Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are not just looking at a map, we are, I think, staring into the abyss. We're talking about a moment in history, well, alternate history, where the familiar map of North America is being redrawn in blood.
And not just redrawn, but the moral compass of an entire continent has been completely irrevocably shattered.
Absolutely. We're looking at late 1943, bleeding into the grim reality of early 1944.
It is an incredibly dark time. I mean, if you look at the source material, settling accounts at the death by Harry Turtledove, the scale of this conflict is just massive. It's industrial slaughter on a continental level.
It really is. And for those who might be new to this specific timeline, or if you're just joining us, we really need to set the stage here. This is a world where the South won the Civil War, the Confederate States of America, the CSA, exists as a separate hostile nation.
Right, and has for decades.
For decades. But right now, the CSA is crumbling. The United States war machine is grinding south, and it is smashing everything in its path. But the key takeaway, I think, from this specific book is that the war isn't getting quieter as it ends, it's getting nastier.
That's the perfect word for it, nasty. Usually when we think of the end of a war, we think of a winding down, a de-escalation,
A sense of relief, almost.
Exactly. But here, the desperation is just ramping up the violence. The mission for this deep dive is to track that collapse. We're going to look at the disintegration of the Confederate front in Georgia. We're going to uncover the truly horrific reality of the CSA's population reduction camps.
A term which we'll have to unpack.
We will. And we're going to track this desperate secret race for a superweapon that could change everything at the very last second.
And the vibe here isn't just military history. It's not just moving arrows on a map. It's a story of psychological breaking points, isn't it? We've got crumbling cities, secret submarine rendezvous in the freezing Atlantic, and a really chilling vision of what human beings do when they are backed into a corner.
Completely.
So let's start where the fighting is thickest, the Georgia grind.
Right. The fall, or maybe a better word, is a strangulation of Atlanta.
The strategic picture here is really dominated by one man on the U.S. side, General Irving Morrell. He's the U.S. commander, and he's executing something the books refer to as the slash. Now, before we get into the details, for someone who isn't a West Point graduate, what exactly is a slash in this context?
It's a brilliant, but also brutal piece of operational art. You have to understand the context. In previous wars, or even earlier in this war, the goal was usually to capture key cities. You take the city, you take the factory, you win the prize.
The symbolic victory.
The symbolic victory, the industrial hub. But Morrell looks at Atlanta, which is the industrial heart and soul, the rail center of the Confederacy, and he decides he's not going to take the bait. He realizes that if he attacks Atlanta head-on, he's going to get bogged down.
Like what happened in Pittsburgh, right? That seems to be the lesson everyone learned the hard way.
Exactly. That's the ghost haunting every U.S. commander. In Pittsburgh, the U.S. Army had to fight house to house, block by block. It was an absolute meat grinder, snipers in every window, booby traps in every doorway. The casualties were horrific.
And it took forever.
Forever. So Morrell looks at Atlanta and thinks, I am not doing that again. So the slash is his solution. He drives his armored columns, we're talking thousands of tanks southeast, completely bypassing the city. He's not even trying to take it. He aims for the coast.
Wait, hold on. You say Morrell is pivoting past Atlanta, but generally leaving a massive enemy garrison behind your lines is military suicide 101. Isn't he worried they'll just sortie out and cut his supply lines? If I'm the Confederate commander in Atlanta and the enemy just walks past me, my first instinct is to attack his rear immediately.
That's the logical fear, right? That's what a traditional general would think, and that's probably what the Confederates were expecting him to think. But Morrell is banking on a crucial piece of intelligence, a crucial reality on the ground. The Confederates are immobile. They don't have the fuel. The U.S. has systematically destroyed their refineries and, more importantly, cut off the oil coming from Texas and Oklahoma. So the Confederate tanks in Atlanta, they're essentially stationary pillboxes. They have maybe enough gas to move from one side of a street to the other.
So they can defend, but they can't maneuver. They can't project power.
Exactly. They can sit there and be a fortress, but they can't chase him. They can't launch a counteroffensive. Morrell has figured this out.
So he's weaponizing their poverty against them.
Precisely. He realizes that if he cuts the rail lines east of the city and just puts a loose cordon around it, he can strangle Atlanta without feeding his own men into a shredder. He's thinking about the long game, reaching the sea, cutting the Confederacy in two, rather than just grabbing a trophy city immediately. He's making the entire Confederate army in Atlanta irrelevant by just driving past them.
It's like cutting the blood flow to a tumor rather than trying to perform surgery on it.
That's a perfect analogy. He's just letting it wither on the vine.
That makes a lot of sense. But while Morrell is playing this calculated, high-level game of chess, the Confederate command seems to be playing, well, I don't know what they're playing. Russian roulette, maybe?
Dysfunctional would be a polite way to put it.
Yeah.
You have General George Patton in charge of the Confederate defense of Atlanta. Now, listeners need to completely reset their mental image of Patton.
Right. This is not the U.S. hero of our timeline.
Not at all. In this timeline, he's a Confederate general. And by 1944, he is portrayed as, well, obsessive. He believes the answer to every single tactical problem is attack. It's his only setting.
Even when they have no gas and no air support.
Even when it makes absolutely no sense, even when it's suicidal. He literally cannot stand to be on the defensive. The source material makes it clear that it offends his soul. He sees it as cowardly.
This leads to a massive confrontation that I think really highlights the chaos in the CSA leadership. You have Patton clashing with Brigadier General Clarence Potter. Now, Potter is a character we've seen throughout this series. He's intelligent, he's sharp, he went to Yale. He's not one of the good old boys.
No, Potter is the voice of reason in a room full of screaming fanatics.
Right.
He's the guy who looks at the spreadsheet while everyone else is looking at the flag. And Patton orders him to launch a one-corps attack against a massive U.S. force near a town called Lawrenceville.
A one-corps attack against what?
Against Morrell's entire flank. It's an overwhelming U.S. force. Potter looks at the map, he looks at the reality on the ground, the mud, the U.S. artillery superiority, the complete lack of air cover, and he basically says, "This is insanity, I won't do it." He tells Patton that trying to knock down a brick wall with your head only hurts your head.
The dialogue in the source material here is just blistering. Potter tells him, flat out, "I won't be a party to it," and Patton just loses it. He calls him a yellow son of a bitch.
And Potter gives it right back. He says, "Fuck you, sir." That moment is so telling. That little pause before, "Sir."
It's the ultimate act of defiance while still, technically following protocol.
Right. And Potter is cynical. He went to Yale before the Great War. He speaks like a damn Yankee, and he knows deep down that the war is lost. He refuses to throw his men away for Patton's ego or for President Jake Featherston's delusions. He essentially commits mutiny to save his men.
And he gets relieved of command for it on the spot.
He does. Patton relieves him right there. In a different army, or maybe earlier in the war, Potter might have been put against a wall and shot for that. But here, the command structure is so chaotic, he just survives the purge. He gets sent back to Richmond.
Which turns out to be a strange twist of fate.
A very weird twist of fate.
Yeah.
Because he's an intelligence officer by trade, this professional failure actually positions him perfectly to be moved into the secret weapons program later on. Getting fired saved his life and put him right in the center of the biggest secret of the entire war.
It's incredible. While the generals are screaming at each other in these headquarters, I want to zoom in on the ground level because the source material gives us this fantastic look at a guy named Lieutenant Colonel Jerry Dover. He's a quartermaster. And frankly, if you want to know how a war is actually going, don't ask the general, ask the guy trying to find the ammo.
That is always true. And Dover is frantic. He's the guy trying to hold the crumbling logistics of the CSA together with, like, duct tape and prayers. He's in Atlanta bullying suppliers on the phone just to get anti-barrel ammunition.
Okay, let's pause on anti-barrel. We see this term a lot in the text. For the uninitiated, we should clarify the lexicon here. In our timeline, we call them tanks.
Right. In this timeline, the terminology split back in World War I. The British called them tanks in our world as a code name, and it stuck. In this timeline, the slang that stuck was barrels, derived from terms like land ships and water barrels.
So when you hear Jerry Dover screaming for anti-barrel armor-piercing shells, he's trying to find something that can stop a 30-ton American steel monster.
Exactly. And the tragedy for Dover is the Confederate industrial base is so shattered, they aren't sending him armor-piercing shells. They're sending him high explosive.
Which just bounces right off a tank, doesn't it? It's basically useless.
It's like throwing rocks at a rhino. It makes a big boom, maybe it scratches the paint, maybe it scares the crew for a second, but the tank keeps coming. Dover is on the phone screaming at some bureaucrat, "What are the guns supposed to shoot? Aspirins!"
That line cracked me up. It's that perfect, dark soldier humor born of complete desperation.
It shows the absolute state of their supply chain. And what's fascinating is the contrast between Dover's reality begging for shells, seeing the supply trucks break down for lack of parts, and the official line from Richmond. He reads the Armored Bear, which is the CSA Army newspaper.
And it's pure fantasy.
Pure fantasy. It claims victories while cities are falling. It claims production is up while factories are burning. It even has this surreal story about guards playing football with prisoners at Andersonville, trying to pretend that everything is normal, humane.
Meanwhile, Dover actually finds a U.S. propaganda leaflet that falls from a bomber. It says, "Confederate soldiers, your cause is lost." And the irony is, Dover keeps it. He almost seems to agree with it more than his own newspaper.
It's a sign of total morale collapse. When the enemy's propaganda feels more truthful than your own news, you are in deep, deep trouble. He even, ironically, keeps the leaflet in his pocket thinking, my ass, regarding the idea that the U.S. are liberators, but he's implicitly acknowledging they are right about the war being lost. He's fighting out of habit now, maybe out of duty, but not out of belief.
Speaking of the enemy, we get a view from the U.S. side of this Georgia grind. We meet Michael Pound. He commands a platoon of barrels, U.S. tanks, and the technical superiority the U.S. has at this point is just, it's overwhelming. It feels like a video game where one side has cheats turned on.
It really does. Pound is a professional. He's an older soldier. He's methodical. The source describes him using his 3.5-inch gun to snipe Confederate assault guns from over 1.5 miles away.
1.5 miles? That's an incredible range for a WWII-era tank. It's almost modern.
It is. In our timeline, typical tank engagement ranges were often under 800 yards, especially in the hedgerows of Europe. But here, the combination of U.S. optics and the gun's velocity are so superior that they are killing the enemy before the enemy can even effectively see them.
It's not even a fight.
It's not. Pound spots a Confederate vehicle, his gunner Scullard lays the crosshairs, and boom, the target just vanishes in a cloud of smoke and fire. The Confederates can't touch him, their shells fall short or bounce off.
And Payne notes who he is fighting, right? It's not the elite troops anymore. He sees the difference.
No, absolutely not. He notes that the Confederates are throwing in scrubs, old men, young boys, inferior equipment. He can tell from the way they drive, the way they shoot. The first team of the CSA is either dead, wounded, or trapped in Atlanta with no fuel. Pound and his crew are just picking off the reserves. It's not even a fair fight anymore. It's target practice with live targets.
It really paints a picture of a juggernaut rolling over a broken army. But as that juggernaut rolls deeper into the South, they uncover something much, much darker than just a beaten army. They find the camps.
This is the turning point for the moral dimension of the war. We've known about the camps as readers, but now the U.S. Army is finding them. General Abner Dowling on the U.S. side in Texas captures Camp Determination.
We've talked about Camp Determination in previous deep dives. It was a hellscape. But now it's in U.S. hands. What does Dowling find?
He finds the aftermath of industrial genocide, the mass graves, the empty barracks, the gas chambers. The sheer scale of it shocks him. And he's a hardened general who has seen a lot of combat.
And he does something very specific. He doesn't just, document it and move on.
No, he does something very deliberate. He forces the local population, the mayor of the nearby town of Snyder, the leading citizens, the preachers, to tour the camp.
Forced witnessing.
Exactly. He rubs their noses in it. He makes them see the bodies, smell the death. He wants them to confront what their government was doing in their name, right in their backyard.
And what's the reaction?
It's mixed, which is horrifying in itself. The source mentions that the mayor of Snyder is so overcome with shame or horror that he goes home and shoots himself. But Dowling notes that some of the other locals remain completely indifferent. They walk through a death camp, past piles of bodies, and they still think the coons had it coming. It shows just how deep the state's indoctrination goes.
But the machinery of the camps hasn't stopped just because one of them fell. We get introduced to Jefferson Pinkard. He's the commandant of a new camp, Camp Humble near Houston. And this segment of the book was genuinely hard to read.
Oh, yeah.
It's not the graphic violence so much, it's the attitude.
It's chilling. Pinkard is the absolute embodiment of the banality of evil. He's running a facility designed for population reduction. That's the official euphemism of Negroes. But he doesn't act like a raving monster. He acts like a frustrated middle manager.
He's worried about logistics.
He's worried about logistics. He's annoyed that the crematorium stacks are belching out smells of burning flesh because it's inefficient and it's upsetting the guards. He's worried about his guards' morale because the smell makes them sick and he doesn't want them to commit suicide. He views mass murder as a plumbing problem. How can we make this process run smoother?
There is a specific scene that I think we need to unpack because it is utterly devastating. Pinkard is at the camp, and he's told that a prisoner is asking for him by name. A black man named Vespasian.
Right. And it turns out Pinkard knows him. They worked together years ago at a steel mill in Birmingham.
They didn't just work together. The text implies they were almost friendly, work buddies. They shared lunch breaks. They talked about their lives.
Exactly. And Pinkard goes to see him.
Mhm.
And this is where the writing just gets you in the gut. Pinkard walks in, and he doesn't shout. He doesn't pull a gun. He brings him a cup of water. He asks Vespasian, "How's your feet? You holding up?"
It's so mundane.
It's terrifyingly mundane. They chat about old times.
Mhm.
Vespasian asks about Pinkard's ex-wife, Emily. They talk about mutual acquaintances from the steel mill who have died. It's this surreal, almost cordial reunion between a commandant and a prisoner in a death camp.
It makes the betrayal so much worse. Because you can feel Vespasian actually relax. He thinks, okay, Jeff knows me. Jeff is a good old boy. He'll look out for me. I'm safe.
He has a moment of hope. And then Vespasian asks the big question. He asks, "What's going to happen to me, Jeff?"
And this is where the knife twists. Pinkard lies to his face, smoothly, without a flicker of emotion. He tells Vespasian, don't you worry about a thing. This is just a transit camp. We'll feed you, clean you up, and you'll sit out the war here. He gives him hope.
It's the small talk that destroys you. Pinkard is smiling. He's being reassuring. And the moment the door closes, the moment Vespasian is led away, Pinkard looks at his roster, finds the name, and marks him for processing. He orders the guards to send him to the bathhouse, the gas chamber. He orders his death without a blink.
Why? Why do that? Why have the conversation? Why give him the water? It's so gratuitously cruel.
That's the scary part. Pinkard doesn't hate Vespasian personally. He seems to remember him fondly as a good worker. But Pinkard is a true believer in the state's mission. He believes the CSA must be nigger-free. To him, Vespasian isn't a person anymore. He's a logistical problem to be solved. The lie was just to keep things quiet, to keep the process efficient, to prevent a scene. It's bureaucratic murder at its absolute worst. The switch from old buddy to executioner takes less than a second in his mind.
It's absolutely haunting. It reminds you that the people running these places aren't necessarily, demons with horns. They're people who have convinced themselves that evil is necessary work.
Just a job that needs to be done.
And while this is happening in the camps, out in the swamps and forests of Georgia, there is a resistance fighting back. We get a close look at a guerrilla band led by a man named Spartacus and another named Gracchus.
These men are fighting for pure survival. They know what the CSA wants to do to them. If they get captured, if they surrender, they go to a camp like Camp Humble, so they fight. And the source details a fascinating interaction where a Confederate captain actually approaches them under a flag of truce.
A truce between the CSA Army and black guerrillas? That sounds impossible, given what we just discussed about Pinkard and the state's policy.
Desperation changes the rules. The captain is pragmatic. He basically says, look, the Yankees are coming in force. They are your enemy and they are our enemy. Just leave us alone while we fight them and we won't come after you. We'll even give you rations. He's trying to neutralize them as a threat so he can focus on the U.S. Army.
It's a purely practical offer. Does Gracchus, the guerrilla leader, consider it?
Not for a single second. Gracchus rejects it out of hand. And his reasoning is profound. He tells the captain, we have nothing left to say to each other. He realizes that the bridge is burned. The betrayal is total. There is no going back to the way things were. He says, you know what you've done. He's referring to the camps, the slavery, the generations of hatred. You can't negotiate with someone whose ultimate goal is your extinction.
So they continue to fight both sides?
No, they are exclusively fighting the Confederates.
Yeah.
They know the U.S. is the lesser of two evils, or perhaps even a potential liberator. They even use U.S. POWs they've rescued, right? Jonathan Moss and Nick Cantarella.
Right.
They use them to help raid Confederate supply depots. There's a great detail about them using wheelbarrows to steal food.
Wheelbarrows? That seems so low-tech.
It's brilliantly low-tech. They realize they can carry more flour and bacon in a wheelbarrow than a man can carry in a pack. They raid a depot. Moss even pretends to be a Confederate officer to confuse a sentry, using his white privilege as a weapon against the enemy. They steal the food, and then they disappear back into the swamp, using the wheelbarrows to confuse trackers by leaving a single wheel track. It shows how incredibly resourceful they have to be. They are living off the land, fighting a modern war with stolen scraps.
This resistance isn't just military, though. It's triggering a massive social shift. As the U.S. Army moves in, the entire racial hierarchy of the South is being overturned in real time. We see this through the eyes of Cincinnatus Driver, a black man driving a truck for the U.S. Army.
And he's armed. He's carrying a submachine gun. In the context of the CSA, a black man with a gun, acting with authority, is the ultimate taboo. It's the foundational nightmare of the Southern white population.
And he knows it.
Oh, he knows it. He's walking through occupied towns like Ellijay, Georgia, strutting even, refusing to bow to the local whites or get off the sidewalk. He even calls a local white man uncle, which is a dismissive insult whites use for older black men, flipping the script entirely. He is savoring this reversal of power.
There is an incident with General Morrell that really drives this home for me. A white Southern woman complains to him. She's absolutely furious because black U.S. soldiers are looking at her. She says they're leering.
And she expects Morrell, as a white general, to enforce the old rules. She thinks, surely you will punish these men for their insolence. She is appealing to their shared whiteness over their opposing uniforms.
And Morrell basically tells her to get lost. He says they can look as much as they want.
That moment is an earthquake. He tells her that if they touch her, she can complain, but looking, that's freedom. He completely invalidates the social code she's lived by her entire life. He is telling her in no uncertain terms, your rules do not apply anymore. This is not your country anymore. It marks the end of the Old South just as much as the tanks do.
This shift on the ground is mirrored by a massive pivot in politics. We go to Philadelphia, to the U.S. Capitol, where President Charlie La Follette is giving a major speech to Congress.
This is the total war speech. Now remember, La Follette is a socialist. In this timeline, the socialists are the hawkish war party, and the Democrats are the ones who wanted peace and appeasement. La Follette takes a huge historic step. He announces the desegregation of the U.S. military.
Finally. It took them long enough, didn't it?
It did, but it's happening. It's a pragmatic move. He cites the bravery of the guerrillas like Spartacus as proof that black men can and will fight. But it's also a moral line in the sand. He declares that Negroes will be conscripted and trained just like whites. He is fully integrating the war effort.
And he goes further than just recruitment. He outlines the end goal of the war itself.
Yes, this is crucial. He declares that the CSA will be wiped off the map. No negotiated peace, no armistice, no going back to the status quo. He says this will be the last war. He intends to reunify the continent by force and hold it. It's a declaration that the United States will be the sole power in North America. No more two nations. Period.
How does the Confederacy take that news? I imagine not well.
About as well as you'd expect. Jake Featherston, the CSA president, goes on the radio. He is absolutely furious. He gives this defiant speech, promising resistance to the bitter end. We will fight them on the beaches type of thing. But behind the scenes, he's panicking.
We see that panic in a meeting between Featherston and the British ambassador, Lord Halifax.
This is an incredibly tense meeting. Britain is technically an ally of the CSA, but they are very busy losing their own war in Europe against Germany and have nothing to spare. Featherston doesn't ask, he demands. He bullies Halifax. He demands British secrets on uranium.
He knows he needs a game changer, a miracle weapon.
He does. He knows the U.S. is working on a bomb. He knows Germany is working on a bomb. He knows he's losing the conventional war. He demands the data. And when Halifax tries to be evasive, very strictly diplomatic, Featherston points out that the CSA is actually ahead in one area, rocketry. He tries to leverage that. I'll give you rockets to shoot at the Germans if you give me the bomb secrets.
It's a desperate barter among thieves, and neither one trusts the other.
Not at all. And that leads us directly into the most high-stakes part of this story. The race for the superweapon.
This is a three-way race, right? The USA, the CSA, and the German-Austro-Hungarian axis.
It is. And the source material gives us a scene that feels like it's straight out of a Cold War spy thriller, but it's happening in 1944.
The rendezvous in the North Atlantic?
Exactly. The U.S. destroyer escort Josephus Daniels, commanded by a guy named Sam Karsten. They meet a German U-boat in the middle of the ocean. It's freezing, the sea is rough, the weather is terrible, and the tension is just palpable.
Enemies meeting in secret, because technically the U.S. and Germany aren't allies, right? They're not friends.
They are co-belligerents, a very careful diplomatic term. They have a common enemy in Britain and the CSA, so they are swapping secrets. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, for now. The U-boat passes a waterproof package over to the U.S. ship.
And that package contains German nuclear secrets.
German nuclear data. It's a massive boost for the U.S. program, helping them solve some key problems and speeding up their research. It shows that the global powers are actively aligning to crush the CSA once and for all.
Meanwhile, the Confederates aren't just sitting idle. We go back to General Potter, the same guy who got fired by Patton, who is now on a new assignment. He visits a Professor Fitzbelmont, and they're at Washington University in Lexington, Virginia, or what's left of it.
The campus is a cratered ruin. The U.S. keeps bombing it because they know something is going on there. But underground in the physics labs, they're working on jovium. That's their code name for element 94 plutonium.
Okay, let's get into the science for a second because this is important. Why is jovium different from what the U.S. is doing? Why does it matter?
Here is where the science gets really critical. The U.S., with all its industrial might, is pursuing a bomb using enriched uranium-235. With uranium, you can use a relatively simple design. You just smash two subcritical pieces together really fast. You literally fire one piece into the other down a cannon barrel. Bang, mushroom cloud. It's a gun-type design. It's crude, but it's reliable.
So why doesn't the CSA just do that? It sounds easier.
Because they can't. The Confederates don't have enough uranium ore, and more importantly, they don't have the massive industrial plants required to enrich it. That takes a country-sized effort. But they do have nuclear reactors that are breeding plutonium-jovium as a byproduct. The problem is you cannot use a simple gun-type trigger for plutonium.
Why not?
It reacts too fast, it's much more unstable. If you try to shoot it together in a cannon, it would pre-detonate, it would fizzle, you'd get a small, dirty pop, not a city-leveling nuclear blast. To make plutonium go critical, you have to squeeze it.
Squeeze it? How do you squeeze an atom?
You build a perfect sphere of conventional explosives, like a soccer ball, around a solid pit of plutonium. And then you have to detonate every single one of those explosives at the exact same microsecond. This creates a uniform shockwave that travels inward, crushing the plutonium core into a supercritical mass. This is the implosion method.
That sounds incredibly difficult.
It's arguably the hardest engineering problem of the 20th century. Fitz-Belmont explains the problem to Potter. If one stick of dynamite on that sphere goes off a millionth of a second too late, the core just squirts out the side like toothpaste from a tube, and the whole thing fails. The math and precision required to make that implosion lens work is something people didn't think was possible without advanced computers.
So they are trying to build the most complex machine in human history in a basement while being bombed with slide rules.
Exactly. It's a desperate race to see who can say abracadabra first. And it's a dirty race, too. The U.S. has raided the Confederate facility with bombers. The CSA, earlier in this series, actually launched a commando raid on the U.S. facility in Washington state. They are clawing at each other's throats to stop the other side from getting the bomb first.
And while they wait for the big bomb, the CSA is using those rockets that Featherston bragged about to Lord Halifax.
Right. They're launching long-range rockets into Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. They call them weapons of vengeance. They aren't precise enough to hit a specific building, not usually, but they are terrifying. They're coming faster than sound. You hear the explosion first, and then you hear the roar of the rocket that just hit you. It's pure terror bombing, designed to break U.S. will.
Does it work?
Not really. It just makes them angrier and more determined to finish the job. It's a lot like the V-2 rockets from our timeline's World War II.
A very similar concept. It's a desperate flailing. It's a way for the CSA to strike back even while their armies are retreating on every front.
A sign of impotence, in a way.
Yeah.
They can't win on the battlefield, so they're lashing out at civilians.
Speaking of retreating armies and advancing ones, the nature of the U.S. advance into Georgia is changing. It's not just professional soldiers fighting professional soldiers anymore. It's getting brutal. We are introduced to a unit called Lavochkin's Looters.
This is a dark segment of the book. Lieutenant Boris Lavochkin. He leads a unit deep into Georgia, and he explicitly tells his men to make the enemy pay. This isn't just about taking territory. It's about punishment. He wants to show the civilians that their government can't protect them and that supporting that government has consequences.
They roll into small towns like High Shoals and Good Hope.
And they shoot up civilians. They burn the towns. There's a scene in a little place called Appalachia where a local man, a civilian with only one arm, runs out to them waving, thinking they are help. He thinks they are there to save him from the chaos of the collapsing front.
And Lavochkin.
Lavochkin cuts him down with a machine gun from his vehicle. Just like that. No questions asked. It's a war crime, plain and simple.
We discuss this a lot, but is this just, rogue soldiers, or is this becoming systemic?
The source material implies it's a hardening of the entire army's attitude. After seeing the camps, after years of brutal war, the chivalry is dead. The U.S. soldiers aren't fighting honorable opponents anymore. In their minds, they're fighting the population that supported Featherston and the camps. They want to burn it all down so it can never rise again.
But this kind of violence just begets more violence. We see the tragedy of Dr. O'Doul at a U.S. aid station.
O'Doul is a decent man, a medic. He treats everyone, U.S. soldiers, Confederate POWs, local civilians. But his sergeant, a guy named Vince D'Onofrio, decides to walk a local girl, Billie Jean, home after stitching up her finger. O'Doul lets him go, thinking it's a harmless, kind gesture. Go ahead, walk her home.
And they never come back.
They never come back. A search party finds them a few hours later, both murdered, mutilated. It was an ambush by local bushwhackers. The locals killed the U.S. soldier and the girl for associating with them.
And what's the U.S. response to that?
Immediate and brutal. The local commander seizes 25 local men as hostages. He demands the killers turn themselves in. When they don't, the U.S. Army executes all 25 hostages by firing squad.
And Dr. O'Doul has to listen to the firing squads from his aid station.
It haunts him. He blames himself for letting D'Onofrio go, for his small act of kindness that led to so much death. But it illustrates the vicious cycle perfectly. Occupation leads to insurgency leads to reprisals lead to more hate and more insurgency. It's a downward spiral that has no bottom. It shows that winning the war is an ugly, dirty business.
So as we look at the big picture here, as we start to wrap up, the noose is tightening, Atlanta is besieged and starving, the U.S. has committed to the total annihilation of the Confederate state, the camps are accelerating their work, trying to finish the job before they're overrun.
And the resistance, both black and white, is rising up from within. The entire nation is tearing itself apart, and hovering over all of it is that mushroom cloud just waiting to happen.
That's the terrifying part, isn't it? Both sides are getting so close, racing for the atomic bomb.
And here's the question we have to leave you with, the thought to mull over. The CSA is cornered. They are desperate. Their leader, Jake Featherston, is a proven fanatic who runs death camps. If they get that plutonium bomb working first, do you think for 1 second they will hesitate to use it on a U.S. city?
I don't think so. Not for a second. There would be no hesitation.
Neither do I. The war isn't just about territory anymore. It's not about winning or losing. It's about who gets to exist. And if the CSA knows it's going down, they might just decide to take the whole world with them. They are the cornered rat with a hand grenade, and they're about to pull the pin.
A chilling thought to end on. We will see you in the next deep dive.